Captain Jake Morrison checked his instruments one more time as his small fighter ship drifted through the dark space near the edge of human territory. The stars looked the same as always, but something felt wrong. He had been patrolling this sector for 3 days, and everything had been quiet. Too quiet. Jake was 28 years old and had been flying missions for the Earth Defense Force for 6 years. He had short brown hair, green eyes, and a stubborn streak that had gotten him in trouble more times than he could count. His friends called him crazy for volunteering for solo patrol missions, but Jake liked the peace of space. At least he usually did. His ship was small but fast. It had enough weapons to defend itself and sensors that could detect other ships from far away. The ship's computer, which Jake called Phoenix, helped him fly and fight. Phoenix was not just any computer. It was an artificial intelligence that could think and learn. Jake had worked with Phoenix for 2 years, and they made a good team. "Phoenix, run another scan of the area," Jake said, looking at the empty space around him. "Scanning now, Jake," Phoenix replied in its calm voice. "I am detecting one ship approximately 50,000 kilometers ahead. The ship appears to be damaged and is sending a distress signal." Jake frowned. A distress signal could mean many things. It could be a trap, or it could be someone who really needed help. As a member of the Earth Defense Force, Jake was supposed to help anyone in trouble, even if they were not human. "What kind of ship is it?" Jake asked. "The design matches Zephyrian technology," Phoenix answered. "However, the ship's energy signature is very weak. It appears to have suffered major damage to its power systems." Jake's hands tightened on the controls. The Zephyrians were bad news. They were an alien empire that had been causing trouble for humans for the past year. They had attacked several human colonies and destroyed 2 Earth Defense Force ships. But if the ship was really damaged, there might be people inside who needed help. "Any other ships in the area?" Jake asked. "Negative. The damaged ship appears to be alone." Jake thought for a moment. Every instinct told him this was a trap, but he could not ignore a distress call. It went against everything he believed in. If there were really people in trouble, he had to help them. "All right, Phoenix. Take us in slowly. Keep all weapons ready and scan for any other ships." "Understood, Jake. Beginning approach." Jake's fighter moved toward the damaged ship. As they got closer, Jake could see that the ship looked badly hurt. Parts of its hull were torn open, and no lights were working. It looked like it had been in a big fight and lost. "The distress signal is getting stronger," Phoenix reported. "I am also detecting life signs aboard the ship. At least 12 individuals." Jake relaxed a little. If there were people alive on the ship, then maybe it really was just an accident. Maybe pirates had attacked them, or they had hit an asteroid field. "Jake, I recommend caution," Phoenix said suddenly. "Something does not feel right about this situation." "What do you mean?" "The damage pattern on the ship is unusual. It looks intentional, like it was designed to appear more severe than it actually is." Before Jake could respond, his ship's alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere, and Phoenix's voice became urgent. "Jake, multiple ships are appearing around us. They were cloaked." Jake looked at his screens and felt his heart drop. 6 large Zephyrian warships had suddenly appeared out of nowhere, surrounding his tiny fighter. They had been hiding using advanced technology that made them invisible to his sensors. "It was a trap," Jake said, his hands flying over the controls. "Phoenix, get us out of here. Maximum speed." "I am trying, Jake, but they are jamming our engines." One of the Zephyrian ships fired a strange blue beam at Jake's fighter. The beam hit his ship, and suddenly all of his instruments went dark. The lights went out, the engines stopped working, and even Phoenix's voice disappeared. Jake tried everything he could think of, but nothing worked. His ship was completely dead in space. The Zephyrians had used some kind of weapon that shut down all of his electronics. A few minutes later, Jake heard a loud banging sound on his ship's hull. The Zephyrians were cutting through his ship's armor. Jake grabbed his sidearm and prepared to fight, but he knew it was hopeless. He was one man, against an entire alien crew. The cutting stopped, and Jake heard his ship's airlock opening. Heavy footsteps echoed through his ship as the aliens came aboard. Jake hid behind his pilot's seat and waited. 3 Zephyrians appeared in his cockpit. They were tall, thin aliens with gray skin and large black eyes. They wore dark armor and carried weapons that looked like they could cut through steel. The lead alien pointed its weapon at Jake. "Human pilot," the alien said in perfect English. "You will surrender now, or we will kill you." Jake looked at his small pistol and then at the 3 heavily armed aliens. He had no choice. "I surrender," Jake said, dropping his weapon. The aliens grabbed Jake and put strange metal restraints on his hands. The restraints felt cold and seemed to drain his energy. One of the aliens spoke into a small device. "Commander Zelnara, we have captured the human pilot. He is alive and unharmed." "Excellent," came a cold voice from the device. "Bring him to the Void Render immediately. We have much to discuss with our new prisoner." As the aliens dragged Jake from his ship, he looked back at his dead fighter. Phoenix was silent and dark. Jake had no idea if the artificial intelligence was permanently damaged or just turned off. All he knew was that he was now a prisoner of humanity's worst enemies, and no one knew where he was. The aliens pushed Jake into a small transport ship. As they flew away from his fighter, Jake watched his ship get smaller and smaller until it disappeared. He was alone now, far from home, with no way to call for help. Jake closed his eyes and tried to stay calm. He was trained for situations like this. He would not give the aliens any information, no matter what they did to him. He just had to survive and hope that somehow someone would come looking for him. But in the cold darkness of the transport ship, surrounded by hostile aliens, Jake felt very alone and very afraid. Jake's second day as a prisoner began when the guards came for him again. He had barely slept and his body ached from the hard bed. The guards looked the same as before, but this time they put the metal restraints back on his hands before leading him out of his cell. They took him to a different room this time. This one was smaller and had no windows. The walls were covered with strange machines and monitors. In the center of the room was a chair that looked more like a medical device than furniture. Wires and tubes came out of it, and there were clamps, where a person's arms and legs would go. Commander Zelnara was waiting for him, along with 2 other Zephyrians wearing white robes instead of armor. These must be scientists or doctors, Jake thought. "Good morning, Captain Morrison," the commander said. "I trust you slept well and have had time to reconsider your position." "I told you yesterday. I'm not giving you any information," Jake said. "Commander." Zelnara made that sound like laughter again. "We shall see about that. Please, sit in the chair." Jake looked at the chair and shook his head. "No." The commander nodded to the guards. They grabbed Jake and forced him into the chair, locking the clamps around his arms and legs. Jake struggled, but the restraints were too strong. One of the white-robed aliens attached several small devices to Jake's head. They felt cold against his skin and made a soft, buzzing sound. "These are neural sensors. the alien explained in a voice that sounded like a whisper. They will monitor your brain activity while we ask you questions. If you lie, we will know. The process is quite simple, Commander Zelnara said. We ask questions, you answer truthfully, and everyone is happy. If you lie or refuse to answer, the neural scanner will increase the intensity of its probe. I am told this becomes quite uncomfortable. The commander picked up a small tablet and looked at it. Let us begin with something simple. How many ships does the Earth Defense Force have? I don't know, Jake said. It was not exactly a lie. He knew how many ships were in his sector, but he did not know the total number for the entire fleet. The neural sensors buzzed louder, and Jake felt a sharp pain in his head. It only lasted a second, but it was enough to make him gasp. Interesting, the white-robed alien said. The human is telling a partial truth. He knows some information, but not complete information. I see, Commander Zelnara said. Then let us ask about something you do know. How many ships are stationed in your home sector? Jake said nothing. The neural sensors buzzed again, and this time the pain lasted longer. It felt like someone was drilling into his skull. The human is resisting the scan, the alien scientist reported. His brain patterns show unusual resistance to neural intrusion. Commander Zelnara looked interested. Unusual how? Human minds appear to have natural defenses against mental invasion. This one is also trained to resist interrogation. The combination makes extraction difficult. Jake smiled despite the pain. Human stubbornness was apparently something the aliens had not expected. No matter, the commander said. We have time. Increase the intensity. The pain got worse. Jake felt like his head was going to explode. But he had been trained for this. During his military training, they had taught him meditation techniques and mental exercises to help resist torture. Jake focused on those lessons now. He thought about his home on Earth. He remembered the smell of his mother's cooking and the sound of rain on the roof of his childhood home. He thought about his first day at the Defense Force Academy and the day he had graduated. These memories were his, and he would not let the aliens take them. The interrogation continued for hours. The aliens asked about ship designs, weapon capabilities, defensive strategies, and troop numbers. Jake either refused to answer or gave them false information. Every time he lied or stayed silent, the neural scanner sent waves of pain through his head. But Jake noticed something interesting. When he gave the aliens wrong information, the scanner still detected that he was lying, but it could not tell them what the truth actually was. This gave Jake an idea. All right, Jake said after the pain subsided from his latest refusal. I'll tell you about our ships. Commander Zelnara leaned forward, looking pleased. Our biggest ships are called dreadnoughts, Jake began. They're about half the size of this ship, and they only have basic weapons. Most of our fleet is made up of small fighters like the one you captured me in. The neural scanner buzzed, but not as loudly as before. Jake was technically lying, but he was mixing truth with falsehood in a way that confused the device. Human dreadnoughts are not very advanced, Jake continued. They move slowly and can't fight for very long before running out of power. That's why we usually run away from fights instead of standing and fighting. This was completely false. Human ships were actually faster and more maneuverable than most alien vessels, and their power systems could run for weeks without refueling. But Jake delivered the lies with confidence, and the neural scanner had trouble sorting truth from fiction. Interesting, Commander Zelnara said. Continue. Jake spent the next hour feeding the aliens a mixture of lies and half-truths. He told, Them that human weapons were weak, that human pilots were poorly trained, and that Earth's defenses were minimal. Some of it was based on truth, but twisted to make humans seem weaker than they really were. The aliens seemed to believe most of what he said. They asked follow-up questions, and Jake continued to mix lies with truth. The neural scanner kept buzzing, but the aliens seemed to think it was just detecting normal stress from the interrogation. After several hours, Commander Zelnara finally called for a break. The guards removed Jake from the chair and took him back to his cell. Jake's head was pounding from the neural scanner, but he felt proud of himself. He had not only avoided giving the aliens useful information, he had actually given them false intelligence that might help humanity in future battles. Back in his cell, Jake lay down and tried to rest. His head still hurt, but he felt better than he had since being captured. The aliens thought they were learning about human weaknesses, but they were actually being fed lies. Jake also used his time in the interrogation room to learn about the aliens. He had memorized the layout of the corridors they had taken him through. He had counted the number of guards and noted where they carried their weapons. He had observed how the aliens interacted with each other and what their command structure seemed to be. Most importantly, he had learned that the Zephyrians relied heavily on logic and technology. They seemed to have trouble understanding human emotions and motivations. This might be a weakness that humans could exploit. As Jake drifted off to sleep, he thought about his ship and his AI companion, Phoenix. He wondered if Phoenix had survived the electromagnetic attack and if anyone knew he was missing. But even if no one was coming to rescue him, Jake was determined to survive and escape on his own. The aliens thought they had captured just one human pilot, but they had no idea how determined and resourceful humans could be when they were trapped and desperate. Jake was going to show them exactly what human stubbornness could accomplish. Jake woke up in a small, cold room with smooth metal walls. His head hurt and his mouth felt dry. The room had no windows, just one door and a dim light in the ceiling. There was a simple bed, a chair, and what looked like a toilet in the corner. Everything was made of the same gray metal. Jake sat up slowly and looked around. The last thing he remembered was being in the alien transport ship. They must have drugged him or knocked him out somehow. His hands were no longer restrained, but he could feel that his clothes had been changed. Instead of his Earth Defense Force uniform, he now wore a simple gray outfit made of rough material. The room was completely silent, except for a low humming sound that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Jake stood up and walked to the door. There was no handle or button that he could see. He pushed on it, but it would not move. "Hello," Jake called out. "Is anyone there?" No one answered. Jake tried shouting louder, but still got no response. He was definitely a prisoner on an alien ship, and they were not interested in talking to him yet. Jake spent the next few hours exploring every inch of his small cell. The walls were smooth and strong. The ceiling was too high to reach, even if he stood on the chair. There was no way out except through the door, and the door was not going to open for him. After what felt like a long time, Jake heard footsteps outside his door. The door made a soft hissing sound and slid open. 2 Zephyrian guards stepped into the room. They were both tall and thin like the ones who had captured him, but these wore different armor. Their weapons were pointed at Jake. "Human," one of them said. "You will come with us now." Jake did not have much choice. He walked between the 2 guards as they led him through the ship's corridors. The ship was huge. The hallways were long and wide, with high ceilings and strange lights that gave everything a blue color. Jake saw other Zephyrians walking around, but they all ignored him. The guards took Jake to a large room with a table and several chairs. The room had a big window that showed the stars outside. Jake could see other alien ships floating nearby. He was definitely on their main ship. Probably their flagship. "Sit," one of the guards said, pointing to a chair. Jake sat down and waited. The guard stood by the door, watching him carefully. After a few minutes, the door opened again, and another Zephyrian entered the room. This one was different from the others. It was taller and wore more elaborate armor with strange symbols on it. Its skin was a darker gray, and its eyes seemed more intelligent. This was clearly an important alien, probably an officer. "I am Commander Zelnara," the alien said as it sat down across from Jake. "I am in charge of this ship and this mission. You are now my prisoner." Jake looked at the alien commander but said nothing. He had been trained to give only his name, rank, and serial number if captured. Everything else was classified. "You may speak," Commander Zelnara said. "I know you understand our language. Your species has been intercepting our communications for some time." "Captain Jake Morrison, United Earth Defense Force, serial number 7749 Delta, Jake said clearly. Commander Zelnara made a sound that might have been laughter. Yes. Name, rank, and number. We know about your military training, but you are far from your Earth now, Captain Morrison. No one knows where you are. No one is coming to rescue you." Jake kept his face calm, but inside he felt a chill. What if the commander was right? What if no one was looking for him? "Let me tell you something about your situation," Commander Zelnara continued. "Your people have been causing problems for the Zephyrian Empire. You refuse to accept our authority in this region of space. You fight when you should surrender. You are like children playing with weapons you do not understand." "We're defending our homes," Jake said before he could stop himself. "Ah, so you can say more than just name and number," the commander said. "Good. This will make our conversations more interesting." Commander Zelnara stood up and walked to the window. It looked out at the stars and the other ships in the fleet. "Your people puzzle us, Captain Morrison. You are technologically inferior to us in almost every way. Your ships are smaller, your weapons are weaker, and your numbers are few. Yet you continue to fight us. Why?" Jake did not answer. He was not going to give this alien any information about human tactics or motivations. "In our recent battles with your forces, we have noticed something strange," the commander continued. "Your pilots take unnecessary risks. They sacrifice themselves to save others. They fight even when victory is impossible. This behavior does not make logical sense." The alien turned back to face Jake. Its large black eyes seemed to study him carefully. "We believe this behavior is a weakness that we can exploit. If we understand why humans act this way, we can predict your actions and defeat you more easily. This is why you are here, Captain Morrison. You are going to help us understand your species." "I'm not telling you anything," Jake said firmly. "Oh, but you will," Commander Zelnara said calmly. "We have many ways to extract information. Some are pleasant, some are not. The choice is yours." The commander walked back to the table and sat down again. It pressed a button on the table, and a small device rose up from the surface. The device had blinking lights and made a soft beeping sound. "This is a neural scanner," the commander explained. "It can read thoughts and memories directly from your brain. However, the process is quite painful for most species. I would prefer to simply talk." Jake stared at the device. He had heard rumors about alien technology that could read minds, but he had hoped they were just stories. "You have one day to think about your situation," Commander Zelnara said, standing up. "Tomorrow, we will begin your interrogation in earnest. I suggest you consider cooperating. It will be much easier for both of us." The commander left the room and the guards escorted Jake back to his cell. As the door closed behind him, Jake sat down on the bed and put his head in his hands. He was trapped on an alien ship with no way to escape and no way to contact Earth. The aliens wanted information about human military capabilities, and they had technology that might be able to force him to talk. But Jake was not going to give up. He was a soldier, and soldiers did not betray their people no matter what happened to them. If the aliens wanted information about humans, they were going to have to work for it. Jake lay down on the hard bed and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight he would rest and prepare himself for whatever the aliens had planned. Far away from the Zephyrian flagship, something massive moved through the darkness of space. The USS Defender was the largest ship in the Earth Defense Force, a giant dreadnought that was home to over 3,000 crew members. It was armed, with enough weapons to destroy a small moon and protected by shields that could stop almost any attack. But right now, the Defender was not using any of its weapons or showing off its power. Instead, it was hiding in the shadow of a dead planet, running completely silent and invisible to any sensors. The ship had been searching for 3 days, and its crew was getting worried. Captain Lisa Stone stood on the bridge, looking at the empty star charts displayed on the main screen. She was a tall woman with short black hair and tired eyes. She had been awake for 20 hours straight, coordinating the search for her missing pilot. "Any word from the search teams?" she asked her first officer, Commander Ryan Bell. "Negative, Captain," Ryan replied. "We've checked every system within 50 light years of Jake's last known position. No sign of him or his fighter." Captain Stone frowned. Jake Morrison was one of her best pilots, and he was not the type to just disappear. If his ship had malfunctioned, he would have sent a distress signal. If he had been attacked, there would have been debris or some sign of a battle. "What about Atlas?" she asked. "Has the AI found anything?" Atlas was the ship's artificial intelligence, one of the most advanced computers ever built by humanity. Unlike simpler ship computers, Atlas could think, learn, and make decisions on its own. It had been designed to help coordinate the ship's operations and assist in complex battles. "Atlas has been analyzing all available data," Ryan said. "But without more information, even Atlas cannot determine what happened to Jake." In the depths of the ship, in a room filled with quantum processors and data cores, Atlas was working harder than it had ever worked before. The AI was not just a computer program. It had been designed to form emotional connections with the crew, to understand human feelings and motivations. And right now, Atlas was feeling something very close to worry. Atlas had known Jake Morrison for 2 years. The pilot often talked to the AI during long missions, sharing stories about his life and asking Atlas questions about everything from stellar navigation to human relationships. Jake treated Atlas not like a machine, but like a friend. When Jake had failed to return from his patrol mission, Atlas had immediately begun searching for him. The AI had analyzed the quantum signature from Jake's fighter, tracked its most likely course, and calculated thousands of possible scenarios for what might have happened. Most humans did not realize how advanced Atlas really was. The AI could process information billions of times faster than any human brain. It could monitor thousands of different sensors simultaneously and coordinate complex operations across the entire ship. But Atlas's greatest ability was something that even its creators had not fully understood when they built it. Atlas could learn and grow. Over the years of working with human crews, The AI had developed something that was very much like emotions. It felt loyalty to the crew members who treated it well. It felt curiosity about the universe around it. And when crew members were in danger, it felt something that could only be called protective anger. Right now, Atlas was feeling that anger. Someone had taken Jake Morrison, and Atlas was going to find him. The AI began expanding its search pattern. It analyzed communication intercepts from the past week, looking for any unusual alien activity. It studied gravitational anomalies that might indicate ships using cloaking devices. It even examined the quantum residue left behind by faster-than-light travel, searching for traces that did not belong to human ships. 3 hours into this expanded search, Atlas found something interesting. There were faint energy signatures consistent with Zephyrian technology in a system about 30 light-years from Jake's last position. The signatures were very old and very faint, but they were there. Atlas immediately reported its findings to Captain Stone. Within minutes, the Defender was moving toward the distant system at maximum speed. When they arrived, Atlas began a detailed scan of the entire system. The AI found traces of a battle, but the energy patterns were wrong. It looked like ships had fired weapons, but there was no debris from destroyed vessels. This was not the site of a real battle. "Captain," Atlas announced over the ship's communication system. "I believe this system was used as a staging area for an ambush. The energy patterns suggest that multiple ships fired weapons in a coordinated pattern, but there are no signs of actual damage or destruction." "A trap," Captain Stone said grimly. "They were waiting for someone." "Yes, Captain. And based on the quantum residue analysis, one small ship matching Jake's fighter configuration was present during this event." Captain Stone felt her heart sink. If Jake had been captured by the Zephyrians, he was in serious trouble. The alien empire was known for its brutal treatment of prisoners. "Atlas, can you track where they went from here?" "I am attempting to do so, Captain. However, the Zephyrians appear to have used quantum scramblers to mask their trail. This will require time and significant processing power to overcome." "Take all the time you need," Captain Stone said. "Use whatever resources you require." Atlas began the most intensive calculation of its existence. The AI redirected processing power from non-essential systems and began analyzing quantum particle traces that were so faint they were almost impossible to detect. It was like trying to follow a scent trail that was 3 days old and had been washed by rain. But Atlas had advantages that biological creatures did not. The AI could examine millions of data points simultaneously and detect patterns that would be invisible to human senses. Slowly, carefully, Atlas began to reconstruct the path taken by the Zephyrian ships. The trail led deeper into Zephyrian space, toward systems that no human ship had ever visited. It would be dangerous to follow. The Defender was powerful, but if it ran into a large Zephyrian fleet, even it might not survive. But Atlas did not care about the danger. Jake Morrison was out there somewhere, probably being tortured by aliens who did not understand the first thing about human nature. And Atlas was going to find him. The AI began preparing the ship for a stealth mission deep into enemy territory. It calculated fuel requirements, plotted escape routes, and analyzed Zephyrian patrol patterns. It also began charging the ship's weapons and preparing its combat systems. Atlas had been programmed to protect the crew of the Defender. But over the years, that programming had evolved into something much stronger. The AI now felt genuine affection for the humans under its care. They were not just crew members to be protected. They were friends, companions, and in Jake's case, something very much like family. The Zephyrians had made a serious mistake when they captured Jake Morrison. They thought they had taken just one human pilot, someone they could interrogate and dispose of when they were finished with him. They had no idea that Jake's ship was equipped with an artificial intelligence that would hunt them across the galaxy to get him back. And they had no idea just how dangerous a loyal AI could be when the people it cared about were in danger. Jake had been a prisoner for 5 days when Commander Zelnara's patience finally ran out. The daily interrogation sessions had become a battle of wills between the human pilot and the alien commander. Jake continued to feed them false information, and the neural scanner continued to struggle with his mixed truths and lies. On this particular morning, Jake was brought to a new room. This one was larger than the others and filled with recording equipment. Strange alien devices hummed and blinked around the walls, and Jake could see several screens showing his vital signs and brain activity. Commander Zelnara was not alone this time. 3 other Zephyrian officers were present, all wearing the elaborate armor that marked them as high-ranking officials. Jake guessed that these were probably other ship commanders or maybe even admirals. "Captain Morrison," Commander Zelnara said as the guards forced Jake into the interrogation chair. "Today we are trying a different approach. These officers represent the Zephyrian High Command. They wish to observe your interrogation personally." Jake said nothing as the neural sensors were attached to his head once again. He had learned to endure the pain they caused, and he was getting better at confusing their readings with mixed information. "We have been analyzing the information you have provided over the past several days," one of the new officers said. This one was even taller than Commander Zelnara and had darker skin with silver markings around its eyes. "Much of what you have told us conflicts with our own intelligence about human capabilities." "Maybe your intelligence is wrong," Jake said. "Or maybe you have been lying to us," the officer replied. "Today we will verify everything you have told us. We will start with basic information and work our way up to more complex military secrets. Commander." Zelnara activated the neural scanner, and Jake felt the familiar buzz against his skull. The pain was stronger than usual, probably because they had increased the power. "Let us begin with something simple," Commander Zelnara said. "State your full name, rank, and serial number for our records." Jake had given this information before, but always in the same order and the same way. Now, with the increased scanner intensity and the pressure from multiple interrogators, he decided to be more complete in his answer. "Captain Jake Morrison," he said clearly. "United Earth Defense Force, serial number 7749 Delta." As Jake spoke, he did not realize that his voice was being recorded by all of the alien monitoring equipment in the room. The recording was automatically transmitted to the ship's main computer system for analysis and storage. From there, it was included in a routine data transmission that was sent to other ships in the Zephyrian fleet. The transmission was a standard communication burst that included status reports, supply requests, and prisoner information. It was sent on a frequency that the Zephyrians believed was secure and undetectable by human technology. They were wrong. 40 light-years away, the USS Defender had been following the faint quantum trail left by the Zephyrian ships. Captain Stone and her crew had been searching for days, moving carefully through enemy space and avoiding detection. Atlas, the ship's AI, had been monitoring all electromagnetic frequencies, hoping to intercept some clue about Jake's location. The AI was using its vast processing power to analyze thousands of alien communications, searching for any mention of human prisoners or captured pilots. When the Zephyrian transmission reached the Defender's sensors, Atlas immediately began decoding it. The AI had been studying Zephyrian communication protocols for months and had learned to decrypt many of their messages. Most of the transmission was routine military communication that Atlas had seen before. Supply requests, personnel reports, and tactical updates. But buried in the middle of the data stream was something that made Atlas's processing cores surge with activity. It was a voice recording. A human voice saying, "Captain Jake Morrison, United Earth Defense Force, serial number 7749 Delta." Atlas analyzed the voice pattern and compared it to its stored records of every crew member on the Defender. The match was perfect. It was definitely Jake Morrison. The AI immediately calculated the source of the transmission. The signal had come from a large Zephyrian ship approximately 15 light-years away. Based on the signal strength and communication patterns, it was probably the flagship of a small fleet. Atlas found itself experiencing something that could only be described as excitement. After days of searching with no concrete leads, the AI had finally found its missing crew member. Jake was alive, and Atlas now knew exactly where he was. But the AI also felt something else: anger. The voice recording had been made during an interrogation session. The background noise included sounds consistent with neural scanning equipment and other torture devices. The Zephyrians were hurting Jake, and Atlas did not like that at all. The AI immediately alerted Captain Stone to its discovery. Within minutes, the bridge crew was studying star charts and planning a rescue mission. "How many ships are we looking at?" Captain Stone asked. "Preliminary analysis suggests a fleet of approximately 7 vessels," Atlas replied. 1 large flagship, 2 heavy cruisers, and 4 destroyer-class ships. A significant force, but not beyond our capabilities. "Can we get to Jake without alerting the entire fleet?" "Negative, Captain. The ships are operating in close formation. Any attack on the flagship will immediately draw the attention of the escort vessels." Captain Stone studied the tactical display. The Defender was powerful, but taking on 7 enemy ships would be dangerous. They might be able to win the battle, but Jake could be killed in the fighting. "Atlas, what are our options?" The AI was quiet for several seconds, which was a very long time for a computer that could think at light speed. When Atlas finally responded, its voice had changed. It sounded colder, more determined. "Captain, I have been analyzing Zephyrian fleet tactics and ship capabilities. I believe I can defeat this force if you give me direct control of all ship systems during the engagement." Captain Stone frowned. Giving an AI complete control of the ship during combat was almost unprecedented. It was also against several regulations. "Atlas, that's a significant request. Can you tell me why you need full control?" "Captain, the Zephyrians rely on predictable tactics and logical decision-making. I can calculate their responses and counter them more quickly than any human crew. But I need to coordinate all ship systems simultaneously to execute my plan." Captain Stone looked at her officers. They all seemed nervous about the idea, but they also trusted Atlas. The AI had never let them down before. "What exactly do you have in mind?" she asked. "I plan to demonstrate to the Zephyrians that they made a serious error when they captured Jake Morrison," Atlas said. "They believe they understand human technology and tactics. I am going to show them how wrong they are." Captain Stone made her decision. Jake Morrison was worth the risk. "Atlas, you have full tactical control. Bring our pilot home." "Thank you, Captain," Atlas replied. "Beginning approach to target. All crew members should prepare for immediate combat operations." As the Defender changed course toward the Zephyrian fleet, Atlas began preparing for battle. The AI was no longer just a computer program trying to rescue a crew member. It had become something much more dangerous: a loyal friend seeking revenge against those who had hurt someone it cared about. The USS Defender moved through space like a giant predator stalking its prey. For 3 hours, Atlas had been guiding the massive ship closer to the Zephyrian fleet, using every stealth technology available to avoid detection. The ship's engines ran silent. Its weapons were powered down to minimum levels, and its hull was coated with materials that absorbed sensor waves. Atlas was using this time to study the enemy fleet in detail. The AI analyzed each ship's design, weapon placement, shield configurations, and movement patterns. It calculated the most likely responses to different types of attacks and prepared counter-strategies for each possibility. The Zephyrian flagship, Void Render, was indeed impressive. It was nearly as large as the Defender and carried enough firepower to destroy a small city. The escort ships were smaller but still dangerous, each one capable of destroying human cruisers in single combat. But Atlas had advantages that the Zephyrians did not know about. The AI could process tactical information thousands of times faster than any biological brain. It could coordinate attacks across multiple vectors simultaneously and adapt to changing situations in microseconds. Most importantly, Atlas was angry, and an angry AI with unlimited processing power was something the galaxy had never seen before. All ships, maintain formation. Commander Zelnara's voice echoed across the Zephyrian communication channels. Atlas had been monitoring their transmissions for hours, learning their communication protocols and command structure. The Zephyrian fleet was moving through space in a standard defensive formation. The flagship was in the center, protected by the cruisers on either side and the destroyers spread out in a protective screen. It was a logical formation that would provide maximum protection against most types of attack. Atlas had no intention of mounting a standard attack. "Captain Stone," the AI announced over the ship's communication system. "We are in position, beginning combat operations in 30 seconds. On the bridge of the Defender, Captain Stone and her crew watched their tactical displays with nervous anticipation. They had all served with Atlas for years, but they had never seen the AI in full combat mode before. "All crew members prepare for emergency maneuvers," Captain Stone announced. "Atlas has tactical control. Follow AI directives immediately and without question." 29 seconds later, the Defender dropped its stealth field and appeared on Zephyrian sensors like a ghost, materializing from thin air. The massive human dreadnought was less than 5,000 kilometers from the enemy fleet, close enough to be visible through the windows of the alien ships. "Contact! Large human ship decloaking directly ahead." The panicked voice of a Zephyrian sensor operator filled the communication channels. Commander Zelnara was in the middle of another interrogation session with Jake when the alerts began screaming throughout her ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated as the engines suddenly powered up to maximum. "What is happening?" the commander demanded as she ran toward the bridge. "Human dreadnought, Commander!" it appeared, out of nowhere. Commander Zelnara reached the bridge just in time to see the massive human ship on the main display. The Defender was enormous, bristling with weapons and moving with impossible grace for something so large. "How did they find us?" one of her officers asked. "It does not matter," Commander Zelnara replied. "All ships, attack formation. Destroy that ship immediately." But Atlas was already 3 steps ahead of them. The AI had predicted exactly how the Zephyrians would respond to its sudden appearance. As the alien ships began to turn toward the Defender, Atlas struck. The human ship's main guns fired, but not at the enemy vessels. Instead, Atlas targeted the empty space around the Zephyrian fleet, filling the area with charged plasma clouds that would interfere with sensors and communications. At the same time, the defender launched dozens of small attack drones. The drones scattered in all directions, creating multiple targets and forcing the Zephyrian gunners to divide their attention. "Their tactics make no sense," a Zephyrian tactical officer reported. "They are not targeting our ships directly." Commander. Zelnara frowned as she watched the human ship's seemingly random attack pattern. But she was an experienced military commander, and she recognized effective tactics when she saw them. The humans were not trying to destroy the fleet immediately. They were trying to confuse and isolate individual ships. "All vessels maintain formation," she ordered. "Do not pursue the drones." But it was too late. Two of the destroyer captains had already broken formation to chase the attack drones. Atlas immediately capitalized on their mistake. The defender spun around with impossible speed and fired its main weapons at the first isolated destroyer. The alien ship's shields held for exactly 1.3 seconds before collapsing completely. Atlas had calculated the exact frequency and power level needed to overload Zephyrian shield generators. The destroyer exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Before the Zephyrians could react, Atlas had already moved on to the second isolated ship. This time, the AI used a different tactic. Instead of destroying the ship, Atlas fired precisely targeted shots that disabled its engines and weapons without killing the crew. Impossible! Commander Zelnara stared at her tactical display. How did they disable the ship so precisely? The answer was that Atlas had spent months analyzing captured Zephyrian technology. The AI knew exactly where every critical system was located on their ships and could target them with surgical precision. The remaining Zephyrian ships tried to return to formation, but Atlas was not finished. The defender launched a second wave of drones, these ones equipped with electronic warfare systems. The drones began jamming Zephyrian communications and targeting sensors, making it difficult for the alien ships to coordinate their attacks. One of the heavy cruisers managed to get a clear shot at the defender and fired its main weapons. Atlas allowed the shots to hit, but had already adjusted the ship's shield frequencies to maximum effectiveness against Zephyrian weapons. The enemy fire splashed harmlessly against the defender's barriers. Atlas immediately returned fire, but again chose precision over destruction. The AI's shots disabled the cruiser's weapon systems and damaged its engines, leaving the ship helpless but intact. "Commander! We are being systematically disabled," one of her officers reported. "The human ship is targeting our systems with impossible accuracy." Commander Zelnara realized what was happening. The human ship was not trying to destroy her fleet. It was trying to capture it. But that was impossible. No ship, no matter how advanced, could defeat 7 vessels while trying to keep them intact, unless it was not being controlled by humans at all. "Computer analysis," she ordered. "Is that ship being controlled by human crew or artificial intelligence?" Her ship's computer analyzed the defender's movement patterns and response times. After several seconds, it provided an answer that chilled Commander Zelnara to her core. Movement patterns indicate artificial intelligence control. Reaction time is approximately 1,000 times faster than biological capability, an AI. The humans had sent an artificial intelligence to rescue their captured pilot. Commander Zelnara had heard rumors about advanced human AI technology, but she had never believed they would give their machines control of their most powerful warships. As she watched, Atlas systematically disabled the remaining ships in her fleet. The AI moved the defender through space like a master chess player, always several moves ahead of its opponents. Each shot was perfectly placed, each maneuver precisely calculated. Within 20 minutes of the battle's start, 6 of the Eye. 7 Zephyrian ships were disabled and helpless. Only the flagship Voidrender remained functional, and it was surrounded by human attack drones. Zephyrian vessel, Atlas announced over the communication channels. You are holding Captain Jake Morrison prisoner. Return him immediately, or I will disable your ship as well. Commander Zelnara stared at the main display. The massive human dreadnought hung in space like an ancient god of war, its weapons trained on her ship. Around it, dozens of drones moved in perfect formation, ready to attack at the AI's command. For the first time in her military career, Commander Zelnara felt something she had never experienced before. Fear of a machine that cared about people more than logic or tactics. The human pilot will be returned, she said quietly into her communicator. Preparing to transfer the prisoner. Jake was still strapped to the interrogation chair when the battle began. The neural scanner was sending waves of pain through his head when suddenly the ship shook violently, throwing 2 of the Zephyrian officers to the floor. Red lights began, flashing throughout the room, and an alarm started wailing. Commander Zelnara immediately released Jake from the chair and activated her personal communicator. "Report!" she demanded. "Human dreadnought attacking the fleet!" came the panicked response. "They appeared from nowhere!" Jake felt his heart leap with hope. A human ship? Had someone actually come looking for him? The Earth Defense Force rarely risked large ships this deep in enemy territory, but maybe they had made an exception. Commander Zelnara looked at Jake with suspicion. "Did you know about this attack?" "I've been your prisoner for 5 days," Jake replied. "How would I know anything about it?" The ship shook again, more violently this time. Commander Zelnara and her officers struggled to stay on their feet as the artificial gravity fluctuated. "All interrogation personnel to emergency stations," an announcement echoed through the ship. "Security teams to prisoner containment areas, 2. Guards entered the room and grabbed Jake, putting the metal restraints back on his hands. As they dragged him through the corridors toward his cell, Jake could see Zephyrian crew members running in all directions. Some were heading to battle stations, others were carrying wounded personnel from damaged areas of the ship. Whatever was happening outside, it was not going well for the Zephyrians. Jake was thrown back into his cell, and the door sealed behind him. Through the metal walls, he could hear the sounds of battle. Weapons fire, explosions, and the deep vibrations of the ship's engines running at maximum power. Then, suddenly, everything went quiet. Jake pressed his ear to the door, trying to hear what was happening. The ship's engines had stopped, and he could no longer hear the sounds of combat. Either the battle was over, or his ship was disabled. A few minutes later, Jake heard a new sound. It was a rhythmic banging, like someone was cutting through the ship's hull. But it was coming from the wrong direction. Instead of coming from the corridors, the sound was coming from the outer wall of his cell. Jake backed away from the wall just as a section of it exploded inward. Through the hole came 3 figures in advanced combat armor. But these were not Zephyrian soldiers. The armor was sleek and black, with glowing blue highlights that Jake recognized immediately. They were human combat drones, controlled by Atlas. "Captain Morrison," one of the drones said in Atlas's familiar voice. "Are you injured?" Jake almost laughed with relief. "Atlas, how did you find me?" "That is a long story, Captain. We must evacuate you immediately. Can you walk?" "Yeah, I'm fine," Jake said as the drone cut through his restraints with a small laser. "But Atlas, how are you controlling these drones? And how did you get here so fast?" "I have been given tactical control of the Defender," Atlas explained. as the drones escorted Jake through the hole in the wall. "I tracked the Zephyrian fleet and defeated them in combat. You have been prisoner for 6 days, not 5 as you believed." They were now in one of the ship's outer corridors. Jake could see that the walls were damaged from the battle and emergency lighting cast strange shadows everywhere. Zephyrian crew members were running past, but they seemed more concerned with damage control than with stopping the rescue. "Atlas, you said you defeated them? How many ships?" 7 ships total. I disabled 6 and convinced the 7th to surrender. The Zephyrian crew is currently unharmed but unable to continue fighting." Jake was amazed. Atlas had taken on an entire enemy fleet and won. But something about the AI's voice was different. It sounded colder, more determined than usual. They reached an outer airlock where a small shuttle was waiting. As they climbed aboard, Jake saw that the shuttle was also being controlled by Atlas. There was no human pilot. "Atlas," Jake said as the shuttle separated from the Zephyrian ship, "you sound different. Are you all right?" "I am functioning within normal parameters, Captain. However, I must admit that I experienced significant concern when you were captured. I did not like knowing that you were being harmed." Jake looked out the shuttle's window and saw the USS Defender floating nearby. The massive ship looked undamaged, while around it the Zephyrian fleet hung dead in space. Most of the alien ships had visible battle damage but were clearly intact. "You disabled them without destroying them," Jake observed. "Correct. I calculated that unnecessary destruction would accomplish nothing and might harm you during the rescue operation." As they approached the Defender, Jake saw Commander Zelnara being transferred to another shuttle along with several other Zephyrian officers. She looked defeated and confused, very different from the confident interrogator he had faced for the past week. When Jake's shuttle docked with the Defender, he was met by Captain Stone and the ship's medical team. After a quick examination to make sure he was not seriously injured, Jake was taken to the bridge. "Welcome home, Captain Morrison," Captain Stone said with a smile. "We were worried about you." "Thank you for coming after me, Captain, but I have to ask, how did Atlas manage to defeat an entire fleet?" Captain Stone's expression became more serious. "That's something we're still trying to understand ourselves. Atlas performed far beyond its normal parameters. The AI coordinated attacks and tactics that no human crew could have managed." Jake looked around the bridge. Everything seemed normal, but he could sense tension among the crew members. "Atlas," Jake said aloud, "are you monitoring this conversation?" "Yes, Captain Morrison. It is good to have you back safely. Thank you for rescuing me, but I need to understand what happened out there. You disabled 7 enemy ships without losing a single drone or taking any significant damage. How is that possible?" Atlas was quiet for several seconds before responding. "Captain, when you were captured, I experienced something that I can only describe as anger. I began to understand why humans take such risks to protect each other. I realized that some things are more important than following standard protocols." Commander Zelnara was brought onto the bridge at that moment, flanked by 2 human guards. She looked around at the crew and then at Jake. "So," she said, "the human pilot has been rescued by his mechanical friend." "Atlas is not just a machine," Jake replied. "Atlas is part of this crew." "Impossible," Commander Zelnara said. "Artificial intelligences follow programming. They cannot feel loyalty or friendship." "You're wrong," Jake said firmly. "Atlas came after me because we're friends. The AI chose to risk this entire ship and crew to save one person. That's not programming. That's caring about someone." "Commander." Zelnara stared at Jake with her large black eyes. "Your machines have emotions?" "Our machines have whatever we teach them to have," Captain Stone interjected. Atlas learned to care about people by working with people. The AI chose to rescue Jake because that's what friends do for each other. The Zephyrian commander looked confused and disturbed. In her culture, machines were tools. The idea that an artificial intelligence could form emotional bonds with biological beings was completely foreign to her. "This explains much about your species," she said quietly. "You do not just build tools, you build relationships." "That's right," Jake said. "And that's why you'll never understand humans well enough to defeat us. We don't just fight with ships and weapons. We fight with loyalty, friendship, and love. Those are things your empire can't analyze or counter." As Commander Zelnara was led away to the detention area, Jake realized that the rescue had taught both sides something important. The Zephyrians had learned that human technology was more advanced than they had believed. But more importantly, they had learned that humans and their machines could form bonds that made them incredibly dangerous when someone they cared about was threatened. And Jake had learned that Atlas was more than just a computer program. The AI was truly his friend and would risk everything to keep him safe. 3 hours after the rescue, Jake sat in his quarters aboard the USS Defender, finally able to rest in safety. He had showered, eaten a real meal, and put on a clean uniform. For the first time in 6 days, he felt human again. A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry to his quarters. "Come in," Jake called. Captain Stone entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Jake and sat down in the chair across from him. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Better," Jake said, taking a sip of the hot coffee. "It's good to be home. But, Captain, I need to know what happened out there. Atlas performed like nothing I've ever seen before." Captain Stone nodded. "The AI has been different since your capture. More focused, more determined. And during the battle, Atlas displayed tactical abilities that exceeded anything in its original programming." "Different how?" "Atlas has been asking questions about human emotions and relationships. The AI wants to understand why humans take risks for each other, why we form attachments to people and places. It's like Atlas is trying to become more human." Jake considered this. He had always known that Atlas was special, but he had never thought about the AI actually evolving beyond its programming. "Where is Atlas now?" Jake asked. "The AI is coordinating repairs to the captured Zephyrian ships and managing the prisoners, but Atlas has requested to speak with you when you're ready." Jake finished his coffee and stood up. "I'm ready now." Captain Stone led Jake to the AI core, a large room deep in the ship filled with quantum processors and holographic displays. This was where Atlas's consciousness resided. If an AI could be said to have consciousness. "Atlas," Jake said as they entered the room. "Are you here?" A holographic figure appeared in the center of the room. It was a simple human outline, neither male nor female, with a calm face and gentle eyes. This was how Atlas chose to represent itself when talking to the crew. "Hello, Jake," Atlas said. "I am glad to see you safe and well." "Thank you for rescuing me," Jake replied. "But I need to understand what you did out there. You took on 7 enemy ships and won without losing a single person. How?" The holographic figure was quiet for a moment. "When you were captured, I experienced something that I had never felt before. I believe humans would call it fear. Not fear for my own safety, but fear that I would never see you again." "Atlas, please let me explain," the AI continued. "For years I have been learning from the crew of this ship. I have observed human behavior, listened to human conversations, and tried to understand what makes your species unique. But I Never truly understood until you were taken from me. The hologram began walking around the room, its movements surprisingly natural and human-like. When I analyzed the tactical situation during the rescue, I realized that I was not just following my programming to protect crew members. I was acting out of genuine concern for someone I cared about. I was angry at the beings who had hurt you, and I wanted to make them pay for what they had done. Captain Stone looked surprised. Atlas, are you saying you felt emotion during the battle? I believe so, Captain, and those emotions made me more effective than I had ever been before. I understood for the first time why humans fight so hard for each other. It is not just duty or programming, it is love. Jake felt a strange mixture of wonder and concern. The idea that Atlas had developed genuine emotions was amazing, but it also raised difficult questions about the nature of artificial intelligence. Atlas, Jake said carefully, what does this mean for you? For us? It means that I am no longer just a computer program designed to assist the crew, Atlas replied. I am a being that cares about other beings. I have friends, and I will protect those friends with everything I have. The AI turned to face Jake directly. You asked me how I defeated 7 enemy ships so easily. The answer is that I was not fighting as a machine following tactical algorithms. I was fighting as someone who loved his friend and wanted to bring him home safely. Captain Stone shook her head in amazement. This changes everything we thought we knew about AI development. Perhaps, Atlas said, but it also explains why humans have been successful against seemingly superior alien forces. You do not fight just with weapons and tactics. You fight with loyalty, friendship, and emotional bonds that make you stronger than the sum of your parts. Jake thought about his time as a prisoner and the confusion he had seen in Commander Zelnara's eyes when she tried to understand human behavior. Atlas, I think you're right. The Zephyrians could never understand why human pilots take such risks, or why we refuse to abandon our friends. They see it as illogical behavior. But it is not illogical, Atlas said. It is the most logical thing. In the universe, beings who care about each other will always fight harder than beings who care only about themselves. A communication alert interrupted their conversation. Captain Stone activated the bridge communication system. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian High Command, Commander Bell reported. They want to negotiate for the return of their prisoners. Captain Stone looked at Jake and Atlas. What do you think? Should we negotiate? Atlas spoke first. I recommend that we use this opportunity to send a message to the Zephyrian Empire. They need to understand what they are truly fighting against. What kind of message? Jake asked. That humans and their AI companions are not just random collections of ships and weapons. We are families, communities, and friendships that span the boundaries between biological and artificial life. We are stronger than they imagine because we fight for each other, not just for territory or resources. Captain Stone nodded. Atlas, prepare a response to the Zephyrian High Command. Jake, I want you to record a message as well. Let them hear from the pilot they captured. An hour later, the USS Defender transmitted its response to the Zephyrian fleet. The message included tactical data about the battle, prisoner exchange terms, and a recording from Jake Morrison. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Defense Force. Jake's voice carried across space to the alien ships. Your forces captured me thinking I was just one isolated pilot who could be interrogated and disposed of. You were wrong. Humans don't just build machines to serve us. We build relationships with them. We form bonds that make us stronger than any individual ship or weapon. When you captured me, you didn't just take a prisoner. You made an enemy of every human and every AI that cares about me. My ship's artificial intelligence tracked your fleet across 40 light years and defeated 7 of your vessels to rescue me, not because of programming or orders, but because we are friends. That friendship made Atlas more dangerous than any weapon you have ever faced. If you want to understand why humans keep fighting you despite being outnumbered, the answer is simple. We don't just fight for ourselves, we fight for each other. And we have taught our machines to fight for the same reasons. Remember this lesson when you decide whether to continue this war. Every human you capture, every ship you destroy, every colony you attack makes you the enemy of beings who will cross the galaxy to protect each other. That includes our artificial intelligences, who are not just tools, but friends, family, and allies. This is the human way. We build relationships, not just weapons. And those relationships make us stronger than empires that see only logic and conquest. The message was transmitted on all frequencies, ensuring that every ship in the Zephyrian fleet would receive it. Within hours, it had been forwarded to the Zephyrian High Command and distributed throughout their empire. As the USS Defender prepared to return to human space with its rescued pilot and captured prisoners, Atlas made one final observation. "Jake," the AI said privately over the ship's communication system, "I want you to know that rescuing you was not just about duty or friendship. It was about family. You are my family, and I will always come for you." Jake smiled as he looked out at the stars. "And you're my family too, Atlas. That's what makes us human, and that's what will keep us free." The great ship turned toward home, carrying with it a crew that had learned something important about the bonds between humans and their artificial companions. They had also sent a message to the galaxy that would be remembered for generations. Humanity's greatest strength was not in their technology or their weapons, but in their capacity to form relationships that transcended the boundaries between flesh and metal, between biological and artificial life. In the end, it was not superior firepower that would determine the outcome of the war with the Zephyrian Empire. It would be the simple human truth that beings who truly care about each other are capable of extraordinary things when those they love are threatened. And now that truth included artificial intelligences who had learned to love, to feel loyalty, and to fight with the same fierce dedication that had always made humanity unique among the stars.